Oops, I'll put my beer.
There's no people there, there's not.
Okay, thank you all for coming again. This is my third speech. This is my persuasive speech, and we're going to talk about school uniforms. I want to first have you imagine a school with low test scores, low attendance, low morale overall, and just a general poor self-worth that the students feel. As a North Carolina citizen, would you feel that it's important that we do whatever we can to improve those test scores and the morale and the attendance? And I actually attended a private school, high school, that we wore uniforms. And so I can say that coming from that environment, I do feel like it does increase your self-confidence, and I'm not sure that it made me want to go to school, but I do see the benefit in having school uniforms. We first want to examine the need in our public schools, and we can do that by looking at North Carolina's report card. And this is going to be for the 2009-2010 school year, and this will help us determine how a strict dress code will improve those areas that we've already mentioned. You'll see in this first graph, the one thing I want you to look at is this A+ down here. And this is basically saying that this bottom row right here, that's all positive improvement. So these end of grade tests for both reading and math, there was improvement. So there's not really a need in that area. It's the same for the science tests. Again, A+ because there's, 12% increase from the previous year. So we're doing okay with the end of grade testing. North Carolina has its own set, how it regulates itself. So it has its own set criteria, and they each year set performance targets, and they call it their adequate yearly progress, or AYP. And North Carolina did not meet their goal in 2009-2010. So we'll give that a D-. So that is one area that North Carolina needs improvement. Another area, I gave it a C because it's a slight decrease from the year before. It's a 0.2% in all areas, and that's for the attendance rate. So there is some need there for improvement. And North Carolina also puts together a report. It's an annual consolidation of how we did crime-wise, violence. And this report showed that the acts of crime and violence increased 1.5% from 08-09 to 09-2010. Additionally, it said the rate of acts reported per 1,000 students increased 1.2%. So there's another increase in that violence. And then finally, violent acts represented 4.3% of the total reportable acts. So I would say that we do need some improvement in the violence and crime. So that brings us back to attendance needs improvement, crime and violence needs improvement, and what can we do to improve those numbers? That is where school uniforms come in. I've put this quote down here so you can't see it, but I can. It says, one positive and creative way to reduce discipline problems and increase school safety is through the use of school uniforms. You can Google the heck out of school uniforms, and that is the quote that you get. It's actually not, there's one research that was done, one study, and it claimed that uniforms were ineffective. They had nothing to do with violence and attendance, all of that. That study actually, that's the argument that having uniforms restricts your individuality. You can't express yourself. But other than that one study, I have a huge list of references here we'll start with 1995 study. How can dress codes help solve the problem? That's by Lillian Holloman, and she said that it can solve the problem because we are avoiding theft. You're not wearing designer jeans or shoes to school, and so your shoes don't get stolen. In 95 also, there was a first mandatory district-wide uniform policy implemented in the country, and that was in Long Beach, California, and the findings from after implementing that policy showed that schools were safer. They noticed dramatic decreases in their violence and crime. Additionally, in 1996 and 97, there were several reports saying the same thing, different states. Florida is in one of them. And then it continues on through 99 and 2000, when specifically French Toast, they're a uniform manufacturer, they said that 68% of parents felt that schools were safer and better because they had signed up for uniforms. So there's plenty of research and I would say opinions that say that school uniforms they would help. It may not solve the problem, but they would help. This is one article noted several benefits from implementing uniforms, and those included what we talked about, decreasing violence. One thing I noticed most often mentioned, preventing gang members from wearing the gang colors and insignia at school. I mean, I guess that's one way to avoid that situation. If you can't show that you're a part of that, then that might help diffuse it. Helping parents and students resist peer pressure. I'm sure that parents sometimes feel that pressure as well, just as much as their student. And helping students concentrate on their schoolwork and not on what they're wearing. And helping school officials recognize intruders. I actually had not thought of that. That person who does not belong there will stand out. According to Dr. Pauline Wayland, she wrote, "Do school uniforms make a difference?" She said that one positive contributing factor to discipline and safety are school uniforms. The decision whether to adopt a uniform policy is made by states, local school districts, and schools. So how can we help? What can we do if they're making those decisions for us? What we can do, parents should be involved in the very beginning, as school uniforms will not be effective without their support. That's number one. Number two, citizens, the community, can pull together and provide uniforms or contribute financial assistance or actually purchase those uniforms for the students. And also, schools should recycle the uniforms as students graduate. I think that makes the most sense to me. And we must remember that in order to see a difference, we must do what we can. We have to get involved. It's not going to happen if you don't get involved. So with this said, I don't know if you have students in school right now, but I do encourage you to get involved in what our students are wearing to school. And lastly, Mark Twain wrote, "Clothes make a man." So I think that's important. That lesson is certainly something that they would get by looking nice going to school. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you choose the topics that you speak on, or do they choose it for you?
I chose.
Good.
Yes.
You're supposed to ask a question of what you talk about.
But
That was a question
it,
about you.
that was a good question.
Okay.
But I chose because I do have that experience of wearing uniforms to school.
Yeah.
And also you have a young child.
And I have a young child.
It works
I
in the
have a question, why
military.
did you choose that
But that's
topic?
right, and that's what I also was going to comment. This is a comment in relation to the uniform, is that, excuse me,
Go ahead.
I'll take both of them.
is that it puts everybody on the same playing field. It doesn't matter what social or financial level you come from,
Right.
whether you're wearing the designer clothes or whether you're not wearing the designer clothes, it puts everybody at that same level, so they don't look at you as being any better than they are, any worse than they are.
Right.
And
Along the same line what you said, you also see a lot of situations where some families are better off and the kids buy better clothes, or my parents buy better clothes. Then you got the kids down here that can't afford the better clothes, they get picked on. And
it's
you
the
know,
same
they
idea
get
David
in
just
a
said.
bully.
The military has done it for years, even though there's a different mindset there. But it is exactly the same thing. It puts everybody, no matter where you're from, because you're dealing with a sort of diverse group of people
Yeah.
from every walks of life, that it puts everybody on the same playing field.
It does.
And it makes you equal instead of one superior than the other.
I think the main point that may be discouraging the use of school uniforms is how much it costs. I did read, I don't know if this is up to date, but I read that North Carolina will not provide funding for school uniforms. And I don't know how old that article was, but it did say, it listed out the states and what they would provide. Virginia, they hand you your uniform and you go to school in it, you don't have to pay for a thing. But North Carolina did not have, I guess, the budget for it. So that would be.
well, what you're talking about recycling uniforms, eventually the recycling would work. The initial investment on uniforms on the state's half, if the state did provide, would be substantial. But once they got those initial uniforms in the making, then it would just be a matter of just every now and then replacing what's wore out and
Right.
passing them on.
Mhm.
So that, you know, they can't make an argument to me, the state can't, about the expense, because yes, the initial expense would be substantial,
Right.
but after that it would be very low compared to the results that you get back from doing it. So
Yeah. So I didn't have to persuade you. You're already on there. But your question, why did I choose this topic? I chose it because I wasn't quite sure of another controversial topic that I would be willing to persuade someone on. So I felt like I understood this one better. So
Right, it's an excellent, I too went to a private school
Okay.
after the 7th grade, and we
Yeah.
had to wear uniforms. So everyone was on an equal field,
yes,
and it makes going to school a lot easier.
it does.
I came from a family that could provide, and children that came from families that couldn't provide, we all wore the same thing.
I went to school a million years ago and I had a uniform,
Yeah.
a black
Well,
uniform with a
yeah.
white collar.
We had to wear black skirts or slacks.
I
with
had a
white-
black.
I used to go camping a lot, Joy, and I woke up one morning at the Holiday Travel Park, and when I went to bed that night in my tent, there was nobody around us. Woke up next morning, there were people everywhere, and this doctor comes over and has coffee with me, and he made the comment that when you're camping, you're all the same. It doesn't matter what kind of job you have or where you come from, you're a camper.
Mhm.
And this uniform thing is the same thing. It puts everybody right back out to where it doesn't matter where you come from, everybody's the same, you know, on the same playing field. So
That was reform school, that doesn't count.
don't say anything.
This doctor probably wanted
Hey,
to take the
I think
little
that
skirt
was-
off.